G'day guys, Matty from Revenge here. In the last episode we chatted about the fundamentals of fishing. So what are the absolute basic things that you need to get out on the water? Today we're going to dig a little bit deeper. We're going to go into spin reels today. We're going to talk about the very basic mechanics of how these things work, and then we're going to spool this bad boy up. We're going to throw a rig on it and we're going to practice some casting. So by the end of today's episode, you guys should have a really good understanding of what you need, how to set your gear up, and how to cast. You're pretty much ready to go and hit the water and start getting into it. Let's not waste any time, get this rod spooled up straight away. Okay, so as I promised, a bit of one-on-one just on spin reels. Basically, they're pretty straightforward. What you have here is your bail arm. You'll flip that over, line's free to come off the top of the spool. When you flick it back over, it will retrieve the line back onto the spool when you wind. Pretty straightforward. Obviously the handle's pretty simple. Turn it, it'll wind line on, straightforward as. What you do need to know about is this screw on top. So this screw on top is actually, it controls your drag. So the looser you have it, the easier that spool will turn, and then the easier it is to take line off. The tighter this drag is, if you crank it right up, then it's much harder to pull line off. So when you get into game fishing, we measure these, with scales, and we're very precise about what we have the drag set to. Honestly, if you're just in the river and you're just having a bit of fun, it is totally acceptable to set this by hand. So once you spool your rod, just take a wrap, pull a bit of line off, you'll feel how much tension's there, and then adjust the screw either tighter or looser, depending on, if you want to make it easier or harder to pull line off. That's basically the fundamentals of a spin reel. They're pretty straightforward. Flick the bail arm over, cast, put the bail arm back over, retrieve the line. Absolutely simple stuff. So basically, when it comes to spooling the rod up, there is heaps of different options out there. One of probably the easiest is to buy a line spooler. So essentially what they do, they hold the spool, they apply a little bit of tension, and then as you wind the line onto the rod, number one, you don't have to hold the spool, and number two, it applies it nice and tight, which is what you're really looking for. To be honest, I've never used one. I've heard really good things about them, but I've never used one. Today, we're gonna go old school. So how I've always spooled these up is the label always faces up. So you want it essentially on the ground with the label facing up. And what this does, as the line comes off the spool, it ensures that the line goes on the reel in the same direction. So then you won't get any twists or knots or any issues like that with your line. So just remember, keep the label facing up, and you want to put this somewhere where it's not going to bounce around and fly off and take off down the road. So what I'm going to do today, I'm just going to put it on the grass here. I'm going to jam a screwdriver through it to hold it down and keep the spool from taking off on me. And then we're going to tie the line onto this rod and we're going to start wrapping it on there. So we'll get this to the ground now and we'll get things started. So you can see here with the spool, I just have a little sticker that leads to the tail of the line. So we'll go and get this in the ground now. As I said, you want to have the sticker facing upwards. We'll get this in the ground now. So the next thing that we'll do, we'll grab that line and we'll start feeding it through the rod. You could honestly go through the bottom eye if you wanted to and bypass all the top bit. I do intend on using this rod today when I finish this video or as part of this video. So based on that, I'd prefer to just rig the whole rod properly the first time and just be done with it. Okay. In this part, it's extremely important that you remember to have the bail arm flipped over. If the bail arm's closed like it is now, you'll tie the line on, and then when you start to wind it in, obviously the line's inside it that won't put any line back on the reel. If you do that, there is a bit of a hack. You can take the spool off, open the bail arm, put the spool back on and go again. But much better off avoiding that altogether. So when it comes to attaching the line to the spool, I just use what they call a double overhand knot. Very, very simple. Throw it into Google, there's heaps on them. But essentially I just go around the spool twice so I make sure it's nice and tight. And then I just do 1, 2, and then that's essentially it. As you can see, the line's on there now. It's nice and tight, the knot is. That double overhand does a great job at holding it. We'll just grab our scissors now and we'll trim this tail off, and then we're right to start spooling. That line's nice and tight. I'm giving it a fair pull there. It's on there pretty good. Flick your bail arm over now and you're right to start winding that line onto the spool. So we're looking pretty good, guys. The reel's spooled. We're pretty much ready to throw a rig on it and get into it. There's just one thing that I just wanted to touch on that I didn't mention before. I'm obviously spooling this rod at the moment on the side of the river, and you know, this is the best that I've kind of got to work with at the moment. What I would do differently if I was at home is I'd just soak that spool in water for, you know, 5 or 10 minutes before I applied it to the rod. Or even better, I'd put the spool in, you know, a saucer of water or a little bowl or something like that, just so it stayed wet. It lays on the rod heaps better, and it does go on with less twists and issues if the line is wet. So ideally, if you've got the opportunity to do that, it is definitely a better way to do it. Obviously today, it's not really the best situation for me, so I'm going to make do with what I've got. But if you are at home and you do have the opportunity, wetting that line before you put it on the rod, it definitely does make a difference, and it's worth doing. Righto, so the rod's spooled, now we're ready to go. On today's video, I'm going to keep it really simple. Running ball sinker, swivel, 1 metre of leader to a hook. That is pretty much the text mark rig for, you know, 90% of fishermen most of the time. So we'll get straight into that now. I'll get this camera set up. And so I find with the knots, a blood knot is definitely the easiest, especially for this kind of fishing. So all you do, go through the swivel. 7 times is the magic number. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So what do? Go back through that original hole. And then go through the new hole that you've just created. I don't do this with mono, and I don't do it with heavy braid. I only do it with thin braid. Just wet the line a little bit and then pull it tight. You can see there, super tight. You can see there, super tight. That line is not going anywhere. That's not. So far we've got our sinker running to the swivel. As you can see, pretty straightforward. We might just trim this tail off to make it a bit neater. So I'm going to use 40-pound fluoro, and the main reason for that is I'm just hoping this line might stand out a bit more. I don't think I got a very good shot of it with the braid. Anyway, go through, round 7 times. I find with this 40, you can probably get away with it, say 5. And then back through that original hole. Pull it tight, just wet the line a little bit, and then as you can see, pull it tight. Awesome looking knot. Definitely not going anywhere. Strong as. And guys, the hook's just the same process. So through the eye, we'll go 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, we'll go 4. 40 is a bit heavier. And then just pull it tight. Wet the line a little bit. And you'll see as you pull it, knot bites in nice and hard there. It does. Good to go. Trim that tail off. And then that's pretty much it, guys. That's our rig done. So what we've got, so the running sinker to a swivel, 40-pound leader to the hook on the end. Straightforward stuff, guys, very easy. So you can see the leaders, you know, maybe a metre or so long. I'm not sure if you can see the swivel's just there, hook's just here. There's a few things you can do with this. I usually just go the edge of the reel seat there, clip the hook in, do it up nice, and there's a few things you can do. What I usually do, I take the hook and I just clip it into the edge of the reel seat there, and then I do the reel up until it takes a tension, and then as you can see, the rod's stored nicely now and it's ready to transport. You can move it around and you don't have to worry about the hook flying everywhere or getting tangled up in stuff. Guys, that's the basics of it. That's essentially how to spool and then how to rig up a rod. This rod now, it's ready to just throw a bait on the end of it, pick your spot, cast it out and catch a fish. So guys, now we're going to learn to cast. I've undone the end of the line, so this is just free in the air now. And basically all the process is we take the main line, we hold it against the grip of the rod here with our finger, we undo the spool, the bail arm, so now the line can come off. We go back, and then as we go forward, we take our finger off the spool to let the line go. So I'll just do a cast now to show you guys, you know, what we need to be doing, and then I'll go through it again nice and slowly. So all we do, we decide where we want to cast. That's step one. I want to go pretty much out here in the middle of this fork. We take the rod, we make sure the end of the rod's ready to go, or end of the line's ready to go. So we've got bait, everything's good. We take our finger and we hold the line against the foregrip of the rod. We open the bail arm. We line up the spot we want to cast to again, and when the rod gets to that point, we take our finger off and we let the line go. Finger off. That's simple. So this is what I was talking about here, guys. Basically, once you're ready, take your finger, hold the line against the rod, open the bail arm. Obviously, if you take your finger off now, the line's just going to drop on the ground, so make sure you leave your finger on there. Go back as you cast. When you're in the right spot, take your finger off and the line will obviously go out into the water and land where you want it to. Once that's done, you have two options. You can either flip the bail arm over to stop the line coming off the reel, or you can just reel a little bit and it'll click over by itself. So the process, just quickly once again, take the rod, work out where you want to cast, grab the line with your finger, pinch it against the foregrip, bail arm over, take the rod back, cast, let go of the line. Once you've done that, flip the bail arm over. So that's it, guys. I hope if there's anyone out there that has watched this video that, you know, isn't familiar with spin reels or hasn't, you know, rigged a rod up before, I hope that's helped, you know, shed some light on it and make things a bit easier. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. There are so many more videos on the way. Cheers.